I think it's interesting to note for maybe some of the people that, a few people that might watch this later on, hopefully more than a few, but like there's maybe an audience of about, I don't know, 15 to 20. Hundreds. And about half of them, I think, went to the GLC. Not saying that's a bad thing, but just saying that it's just interesting to know. And why go to the GLC is one question that might come up. I would say, for me, I just kind of knew it was time. I got to a place where I'd done enough in the regional community that it was time to look elsewhere, to look at what else is going on. And trying to recall a bit of my experience of going to the GLC itself, the conference. There were, I mean, it's fairly broad. Like a lot of conferences, a lot of different tracks to go through. You know, part of me is wanting to open up and be open to different people and experiences and kind of go with the flow and find out things. And then there's another part that kind of has to zero in a little bit and focus and figure out, why am I here? What can I give to some of these people? And what can I receive back in a way that helps us going forward? And I would boil it down to that, you know, be months after the fact now. There are about 3 or 4 conversations that still stick in my head and have provided some reflection, points of reflection in the past, over the past few months. One of those conversations was with a Vancouver burn in the forest, I believe. Simon, yes. We had talked a little bit beforehand, but it was a I found it a valuable conversation because we were both having some similar issues around sound, and to the effect that it was impacting our event in more of a survival. I mean, there was a high motivation to solve some problems and figure things out, and that's kind of how we initially connected. In terms of resources, that if people are interested in something like that, there's a Google Groups on the Apogaea site where there's about 12 or 13 different sound policies that we kind of went out and researched, and it's point of reference going forward if people are running into some of those issues as well. Another conversation we had was with Burning Flipside, Big Texas Burn. One of those events that's probably a good step or two ahead of Apogaea. I talked with a few of the planners out there. Talked for hours. I would say one of the things that came back was there's a few things that we traded strategy of maybe things like getting camp leaders up on the land site ahead of time to help with marking, and they could also see where their camps might be, kind of utilizing the community, engaging with them more. I like the fact that they had a very detailed CAD operation going on where they were marking like every tree and rock, and very, very detailed. It's something that's it's inspiring to see that we could maybe, if we could do that as well and be able to turn that back around to the community and give you guys as much information as possible. Time? Okay. And the last one last conversation I would say was one that I actually was the only person that showed up for. However, I'd like to explain maybe why it was so interesting. It was about a guy kind of geeking out on an algorithm for land use rights, but I found it's actually very applicable to life, a greater spectrum of what goes on in the world, and that being like, are you aware of what the average, the highest budget item for the average U.S. person is? What's the one thing you pay the most for a month? Rent. It's housing, and the basis of housing is if it has any value, it's going to be location, and things get interesting from there. Well, to close it up, I could certainly hit me up later on, we can talk more about it. I would say the one thing to take away from the experience that I found was that just from the many years, the 4 or 5 years I've had working in the Apo org, it seems like there's a lot of well-intentioned individuals that come into it and put in hundreds of hours trying to plan this event. And if there's any way we can shave just a fraction of that off to make it a bit more efficient by seeing what other people have done and just using it or incorporating it better, that we could in fact use that time and energy and to spend it in more creative and innovative ways.